Good morning, everyone. If you will get your Bibles and turn to Matthew chapter 17. Matthew chapter 17, verse 24. We'll continue our study of the miracles of Jesus, and we're going to look at the miracle today of when Jesus paid the temple tax and about how he went about paying that tax, which was a very interesting miracle. None of us like paying taxes. There's a saying that there is one thing certain in life, and that is death and taxes. Most of us, if you're like me, you don't mind paying taxes for schools or the police or the firefighters or maybe some kind of food inspector services or things like that, highways. Those are things we don't mind paying our taxes for. But there's so much waste in our government, and we just don't. We see so many things that they spend money on that we just think they're printing money for stuff for, this doesn't serve a purpose. But it's just something that our government requires us to do. Since the COVID-19 coronavirus, pandemic, whatever you want to call it, there's been a lot of things that our government has told us that we are required to do. Some of those things that they have told us to do, I didn't really like. To stay at home, social distance, wear a mask. There have been some places where people have got arrested for not wearing masks. Not really around here, but in other places. Shelter in place and quarantine and all that kind of stuff. I haven't really done any of those things. I wasn't trying to be a lawbreaker, but I haven't sheltered in place really. I haven't worn a mask when I've been out. And I think it just seems a lot of the rules that they have kind of contradict each other. There's been a lot of the things that they've told us to do. It just doesn't make sense in one area or another. Cindy and I went to Walmart on Friday. There must have been 5,000 people in the Texas side Walmart. And it just doesn't make sense to me that you can have all these people, and I've been to Home Depot, it seems like every day for the past 2 weeks. And it doesn't make sense to me that they're telling us you can't go to church, or if you go to church, you have to be distanced, or you have to wear a mask, and or you can't go to the barber shop, but there's all these people in Walmart or Home Depot or wherever, and it seems some of the things that they tell us to do, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it doesn't add up. But when I've been out, I've tried to be courteous to other people and stay away if try to keep distance if they kind of were looking at me like you need to stay away. But I've also seen some other people when I've been out who haven't been courteous. They have been impatient. I saw a guy in, I think it was Home Depot. He made a scene because something was going on that he just didn't think was right. In our miracle we're going to look at today, we're going to look at how we can still maintain our Christian witness and how Jesus and Peter do that, even though they're not required to do what they're being asked to do. There was a loophole. There was a way that Jesus could have gotten out of this, but he is going to follow the rule of the law and to not offend. And he says that in this miracle, that he doesn't want to offend anyone. He doesn't demand his rights. He doesn't say, I'm Jesus, I'm the King of Kings, you can't tell me what to do, even though he is. but he doesn't demand his rights. And Matthew is the only one who records this miracle of any of the four Gospels. The theme of the book of Matthew is that Jesus is the King. And this is one of those miracles that proves that Jesus is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He proves his sovereignty. He proves his control over nature. He proves his control of all circumstances by performing this miracle in this way. He proves his divine control over everything. Who else but the King of Kings and Lord of Lords could have sent Peter to go fishing, and he casts his line out, catches a fish. The first fish that he catches has the exact money that he needs for this temple tax that they're being asked to pay. Another thing that's interesting from this miracle is that Jesus benefits from this miracle. Most of the other all the other miracles, it's benefiting someone else. It's a miracle of healing for someone or someone who is a friend or family member. Of course, in every miracle, Jesus benefits by it showing his authority and proving that he is the Messiah. Little background. In Exodus chapter 30, it records the Old Testament law that required that all Jewish males 20 and older pay this temple tax that Jesus is being asked to pay. It was just a rule that anyone, any of the Jewish males had to either come to the temple and pay it, or pay a tax collector and pay this tax. This tax was a sizable tax. It was the equivalent of 2 days' wages for the Jewish males. So it was a significant amount of money that they were required to pay for this tax each year. Let's read our text from Matthew chapter 17, verse 24 through 27. After Jesus and his disciples arrived in Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma tax came to Peter and asked, "Doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax?" "Yes, he does," he replied. When Peter came into the house, Jesus was the first to speak. "What do you think, Simon?" he asked. "From whom do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own sons or from others?" "From others," Peter answered. "Then the sons are exempt," Jesus said to them. "But so that we may not offend them, go to the lake and throw out your line and take the first fish you catch and open its mouth, and you will find a 4 drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and for yours." The tax collectors in verse 24, they come and they ask Peter this question. Doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax? For some reason, Jesus had not paid this tax, or Peter. Either one of those had not paid this tax at this time. Rabbis were exempt from paying this tax. Jesus could have claimed that exemption to not pay this tax. Most of the rabbis around this area paid it anyway, just to maintain peace with the temple people and the Pharisees, and just to stay out of trouble. Why did they ask Peter this and not Jesus? Why didn't they go to Jesus and ask him? Maybe they were a little afraid of Jesus. If you go back to Matthew 15, Jesus had went on a tear, just going into the people that are opposing him, and not really caring if he made any friends or not. And so maybe they're afraid to ask Jesus, or Peter, he's a spokesman for the 12 disciples and Jesus. And maybe they're just asking him since he is the spokesman. The tax collectors say, the temple tax is due. You and Jesus have not paid. Are you going to pay? I don't really know why they haven't paid before now. Why are they coming to tell him it's due? Why didn't Judas Iscariot is the treasurer for the 12? Why hasn't he paid it for Jesus? Did the other disciples pay theirs and not pay for Peter and Jesus? I don't know. Excuse me. And when Peter does catch the fish later that has the money for the taxes, it's only enough for him and Peter for the money. So apparently it's only these two that haven't paid. Verse 25, you see that Peter answers very quickly. Yes, he does. He pays. And then he runs off real quick to Jesus and he was going to go ask him, okay, do we pay or not? That's kind of what he says. Obviously, Peter's broke. He doesn't have money to pay it, or he probably would have just paid it right then. He arrives back at wherever Jesus is here. It says Peter came into the house. So Jesus is back somewhere away from Peter, teaching. Probably he's having a little Sunday school lesson there with some people. And before Peter can say, I need the temple tax, or are we going to pay? Jesus answers his question, or answers Peter's question with a question. And Jesus' question is, do kings pay taxes, or do they collect taxes? And what he's saying is, I'm the King of Kings. I don't pay taxes. Kings collect taxes. And so Peter is kind of, in a quandary there about how to answer this. In verse 26, he just says, no, they collect it from others. No, kings don't pay taxes. They're exempt. Here is another thing I thought about. Jesus doesn't have any money. Jesus never carries any money during his ministry. And he could have asked, one of the other disciples, or like I said, the treasurer of the disciples to pay. He could have asked maybe some of his other supporters to pay this tax. But he decides to use Peter and to teach Peter a lesson too here about maybe about his sovereignty and his control of this situation. Verse 27, Jesus says, the first thing that he says there in verse 27, but so that we may not offend them. Jesus wants to make this clear. He doesn't want to cause any trouble. He doesn't want to get in any trouble with the Pharisees. There are many other occasions where Jesus does not care if he gets in trouble with the Pharisees. But when it did matter, he was quick to speak, quick to act, quick to call people out. And many times he offends the Pharisees and others by what he said and what he did. But in this case, he feels like it's not worth it, or it's not something that he should try to cause offense. Paying this tax in this time was not critical thing to argue about in his ministry, and he didn't want to offend anyone. Verse 27, you see the miracle. Jesus gives Peter specific instructions. Go to the lake. Now, Peter would have known that this was a specific lake. Probably some think it was the Lake of Galilee, just a little small body of water close by, where Peter would have known about fishing there. You go fishing and you will catch a fish, and that fish will have the money. Jesus could have reached up behind Peter's ear, pulled a little magic trick, and got the money out from, pulled out a coin behind his ear. Jesus could have just reached in his pocket, boom, turned out a coin that would have had the money. He could have used a lot of other ways to get this money. But he decides to teach Peter a lesson and teach us a lesson about his willingness to obey the law and his sovereignty and his divine control over nature and everything out there. And another thing too, Peter gets to participate in this miracle, which I think is a key part of this miracle. Some things for us to learn from this miracle. I think one of the first things Jesus teaches us is don't offend. If it's not necessary for us to offend other people, and if the government is telling us to do a certain thing, you don't go here, you don't do this, you don't do this. It's just best that we do it. Be a good example. We're going to church this Sunday, First Baptist. I do not want to wear a mask. I do not want to social distance. But I do want to go to church. So I'm going to do what they're requiring me to do. I'm not going to throw a fit, and I'm not going to act ugly. I'm going to obey what they want us to do. And that's the way we should be with our government and the things they're telling us to do. Just try to be a good example, even if you don't want to do it. And a lot of you are probably like me. You don't want to do a lot of the things they're telling us to do. There's a lot of things we don't agree about. It seems that Jesus, when he says, so that we may not offend, he's saying, I don't really agree with what we're being required to do here. But we're going to do it anyway because it's not something we should really stir a stink about. For us, we can still maintain our Christian witness, even when it's things we don't want to do. Next thing, Jesus proves his sovereignty in this miracle. That's a big fancy word that just proves that what it says is Jesus is in control. I believe, it doesn't say, but I believe that the very first time Peter cast out there, he catches this fish. Because it says here, it says, take the first fish you catch. So that would have meant he cast out there the first fish that he caught. He looked in its mouth. It had the coin that he needed. Now who else but the King of Kings could make this miracle occur? How many fish are out there in that water? How many fish have a coin in their mouth? I mean, it's just ridiculous that Jesus tells him what's going to happen, and it happens. Just like this specific fish in this specific location at this specific time with this specific fisherman is going to catch this fish. Proves his divine knowledge of everything going on. The next thing that I see that we can learn from this is the fish. The money that was in the fish was just what they needed. It was just their daily need. It wasn't any more. The fish didn't have $1 million in its mouth. It had the money for the tax. That was it. Peter didn't get a bonus because he caught the fish. He just got the money to pay the taxes. That's all he got. God promises our daily needs. Matthew chapter 6. Jesus taught a lesson about not worrying about our daily needs. I think 5 or 6 times in one small passage there in Matthew 6, he says, do not worry about tomorrow and the things, what you're going to eat or drink or wear, those kind of things. Don't worry about those things. I'll take care of your needs. Next thing I see in this, I mentioned this just a minute ago, but Peter gets to participate in this miracle. How does he get to participate? He does exactly what Jesus told him to do. He went, got his fishing pole, and went and fished at the lake Jesus told him to go to. He cast his line. He caught the fish. He looked in the fish. He got the money. He went and paid. He got to participate in this miracle because he obeyed. And he did what Jesus told him to do. I also think it's interesting how many times Jesus says you or your in these instructions. Verse 27, you go to the lake and throw out your line. You take the fish. You catch. You open its mouth and you will find a coin. You take it and you give it to them for my tax and yours. Peter got to participate. Also, Jesus uses fishing to teach Peter this lesson. I think that tells that Peter was a fisherman by trade before he became a disciple. I think that shows us that God uses where we are today, whatever our job is, wherever we're going today or tomorrow or the next. He uses what's there for us to teach us. As we conclude today, I would like for you to turn to Psalm 15. I want us to read Psalm 15 together in conclusion. This psalm talks about the man who sticks with God. This is a psalm that David wrote, and it's a good psalm about just sticking with what God wants us to do and still being able to be a light that shines out there in the world. Psalm 15, verse 1. Lord, who may dwell in your sanctuary? Who may live on your holy hill? He whose walk is blameless, and who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from his heart, who has no slander on his tongue, who does his neighbor no wrong, he casts no slur on his fellow man, who despises a vile man, but honors those who fear the Lord, who keeps his oath even when it hurts, who lends his money without usury, does not accept a bribe against the innocent. He who does these things will never be shaken. Again, I want to thank all of you for watching these videos each week, and remind you that if you need anything, just please feel free to contact me or Cindy if we can help you with anything. I'll talk to you later.